The SEC championship game in Atlanta, Georgia is officially upon us, and it's two familiar foes. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It's Georgia and Alabama squaring off for the hardware. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Bulldogs and the Crimson Tide. Hello, and I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole the Bear Thompson. We appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Guys, we're inching ever so close to that 30,000 subscriber mark. We cannot do it without your love and support. Also, guys, make sure you check out our friends over at FanDuel, because as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/SECU to get in on the action today. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Georgia and Alabama, as the dust settles on the regular season, we embark on conference championship weekend, and it's the Dogs and Crimson Tide doing battle yet again. Georgia, you know how important this game is to Kirby Smart and company. They want to hoist the hardware. They also want to beat Alabama in an SEC title game for the first time ever. Kirby Smart, he's got a bone to pick with Bama and his 1-7 record. And oh, by the way, how about that game earlier in the season where Georgia fell to the Crimson Tide on their home field, their only blemish on this season? Meanwhile, for Bama, listen, you always want to win an SEC title. Kalen DeBoer is trying to get his first, but the college football playoff potentially hangs in the balance. What happens if you lose? Does margin of defeat matter? There's a lot of storylines, lots to get into. And folks, it's the SEC championship game. That'll get your pulse going at a high rate. Once again, guys, we're here previewing and predicting this game. We're fired up to chat with you all. I'm Chris Phillips. Joining me, as he has done all season long, one of the best in the business, Mr. Cole the Bear Thompson. Bear, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. And like I said, Bear, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, how funny and ironic would it be that after a season in which we had so many different storylines, and this team could go to the SEC title for the first time, this team could go for the first time, we're right back to where it feels like we've been for the last decade or so, with Georgia and Alabama just finding their way to Atlanta. And I'm sure the latest chapter is going to produce yet another thriller, my friend.
In the great words of Thanos to the SEC, you could not live with your failures. Where did that lead you? Back to the two greatest teams on the biggest stage in the college football landscape. It is a rivalry that does not need a name, because if you just know, it's cold, straight reality. The two best going toe-to-toe in the building that ultimately usually helps decide a national championship. You gotta be excited. You're Kirby Smart. Can you finally beat Bama? Or are you ready to admit that you do have a Bama problem? And how about for Kalen DeBoer? A lot of people thought going into the season, hey, you don't win, you might not be here much longer. You lose to Oklahoma, hey, you don't win in the Iron Bowl, you might not be here much longer. Well, how about you win your first SEC championship and silence all the critics and make sure that every Alabama fan who doubted you realizes I am the right guy to replace Nick Saban. I always was the right guy to replace Nick Saban. Starts on Saturday. Let's see who makes it to the final finish in the SEC.
Bear, there will be a time for us to look back on our preseason predictions and kind of go back and see where we were right, see where we were wrong. But I believe you and I both had Bama winning the SEC title. So
different opponent,
same
victor.
Yeah, same victor. So interestingly enough, like you said, it's after all the chaos and the madness, it still comes down to Georgia and Alabama, like we are so familiar. And I will admit, before we get going, Bear, this is a game that I know there's a lot of people out there that have Georgia-Bama fatigue, and I get it. I get it. But I love watching these teams play. As someone that has gone to a few of these games now, I guess really only two, but watching these two go at it, two giants in the sport, it's elite on elite. It's the best on the best, and I'm stoked to watch this game again personally. I love it. If you love great football, you're going to come to the right place if you go to Mercedes-Benz.
I'm telling you, there's something about elite football that will always go ahead and take center stage over just the storylines and the risers and the fallers. When you know that you have two premier programs that can absolutely go on a run and win a national title, and the thing that stands in their way is each other, it adds so much more volume to it. I get it. You can go ahead and say you're tired of seeing this game and how it plays on out, because basically outside of one time with two torn ACLs at wide receiver, it's always gone the same way. But let's just be real. You're always going to appreciate two elite teams giving it their all for 4 quarters of action on the biggest stage of the SEC season.
Yeah, and again, this one's got its own storylines, Bear. We'll get there in just a moment. Of course, this game taking place this Saturday, December the 6th at 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern local time there in Atlanta, Georgia at Mercedes-Benz. Being televised on ABC, Bear, our friends over at FanDuel have Georgia listed as a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 47.5. And if I do recall the game in Athens earlier this season, that is a very similar line and a very similar total to what we saw in that September matchup. Bama leads the all-time series 45-26-4. And of course, guys, like I just mentioned, the last meeting came earlier this year. We were at that game in Athens, Georgia. Bama won that one by a final score of 24-21. Again, we'll talk about how that one impacts this matchup, if at all. But the numbers, and Bear, again, we talked about these the first go-around. Kirby Smart, 1-7 against Alabama. And Georgia, fun fact, has never beaten Alabama in a SEC title game. And I mean, Bear, there's been some thrillers. You know that firsthand. I've watched them firsthand. There have been some thrillers at Mercedes-Benz, and even going back to the Georgia one where Georgia was so close, but just couldn't do it. Just like an Aaron Murray tip pass that gets caught at the goal line and the time runs out. You name whatever game you want. Georgia fans have gone through heartbreak at the hands of Alabama. Again, they will try to avenge that and then some this Saturday. By the way, guys, the SEC Unfiltered Tour will be on hand for this football game. We are really excited to be there back at Mercedes-Benz, hanging out at the tailgate with all the great dogs, all the great Crimson Tide folks. It is going to be an absolutely electric atmosphere because I do still believe, even in a world, Cole, where it's all about the playoff and people are talking about eliminating conference title games, and maybe that's something too. Savor these. I don't know how many of these we got left. So savor these conference title games. It still matters. I think it still matters between these two. I think it matters to add another trophy to the trophy case. I know it's not the ultimate trophy that you want, but it is a step on the way to getting to that ultimate goal. And I think what's interesting, too, as we dive into it, Bear, we'll talk about the nuts and bolts of the game, but like what the game means from the standpoint of what's next. If you're Alabama, I don't think you jump into the top four necessarily. I think you might lock up hosting a home playoff game. If you're Georgia, you lock up the bye. Now, I think there's some mixed feelings from Georgia fans. They'd love to see the home playoff game in Athens. Certainly you don't want to lose the game, though. But from the Bama side, too, Bear, one of the things we have to talk about, if Bama is to lose, how much can they lose by and still feel good going into Selection Sunday about their spot and their standing in the college football playoff? You want to, again, take care of that, just go win the game. But if you don't, man, it's just going to be really interesting. There might be some very uneasy feelings leaving the stadium in Atlanta on Saturday.
Yeah, back to your main point. When you talk about a guy like Kirby Smart, this is not a game that you have to sell him on of, oh, well, we're in the college football playoff, so don't even worry about this matchup. No, Kirby remembers what it's like to play at Georgia. Kirby remembers what it's like to be a part of those championship caliber SEC teams. He remembers what it's like to be on staff at Alabama and winning those multiple countless championship games. So he's going to always have a team period. And then there's Alabama. There's the pageantry. There's tradition. There's the expectation, whether it be with Gene Stallings or Bear Bryant or Frank Thomas. So you could throw in, even with, Mike Shulen, Mike Price, who never were able to meet the expectations. Then you throw in Nick Saban. They want to be in Atlanta. This is a team that you don't have to sell any identity to. They know what it means to win an SEC title and the importance it is to win an SEC title. I will say I don't think Alabama needs to worry about how much they lose by, because at the end of the day, where they fall in the rankings tonight, the SEC is going to guarantee that they get a 15 in. And I think that because of, if you want to keep the college football playoff selection committee all looking at outside the Big Ten and the SEC, you got to put Bama in. And if you're not putting Bama in, that's fine. But then Vandy better be showing up tonight at number 11 on the first team out. You better have Texas waiting on the outside looking in, so that way they guarantee their spot in. Because the last thing that you're going to see is Greg Sankey, the number one team in the country in the SEC. Let me remind everybody this. Alabama's going to be wearing the red jerseys on Saturday. Do you want to know why? Because they have one loss. So does Georgia. Georgia has one loss to Alabama. That's why Alabama's the home team. That's why they're number one in the SEC. You're going to tell the number one team in the SEC because they lost in the conference title game, a game that wasn't promised, they're guaranteed out of the playoff? Spare me. Spare me. They're not being left out. They're just not. But you want to guarantee that you aren't left out, and there is no conversation for that to even happen, and you are the best team in the SEC, and that one blemish against Florida State doesn't really matter. Go out there and do what you always do. It's going to be a good game on both sides of the football. What I'm really looking forward to in this matchup, Chris, how quickly can Alabama set the tone? Because Alabama, remember when we saw it back when they faced off in Athens, Georgia? Perfect on third down. They were 8 of 8. They set the standard. They got up to a 14-0 lead. How are you able to guarantee that you go for the three-peat? Because in both times that Kirby Smart has gone up against not Nick Saban, but Kalen DeBoer, Alabama's jumped up to the early lead. Alabama's come out swinging. Alabama's been the one that's been getting the jabs, getting the blows, getting the punches. They've been finding their way into the end zone. And you can say it first time, okay, well, you got Jalen Milroe, you got mobility at the quarterback position. What do you guys say the second time? Everyone was talking about Alabama's rushing attack. Alabama had Jam Miller moving the football, setting up good second down completions, getting Ryan Grubb to his element. They were getting the ball to Caden Proctor in space. So how does Alabama set the tone in Atlanta with a quarterback who is starting to find his rhythm once again, but is still going to be a little bit under duress because of it wasn't a perfect game in the Iron Bowl, and it wasn't a perfect month of November for Ty Simpson. Took himself out of the Heisman Trophy conversation a little bit. But now he's got an opportunity to gain some ground and gain some steam against a defense that he's already been able to capitalize against before on the road. This is basically going to be a road game because the game is in Atlanta. That's Georgia's secondary home. I mean, they got high-rises and they got apartments. They got penthouses for all the players out in Athens that currently are just right across from Mercedes-Benz Stadiums. They're going to get a good night's sleep in their beds before Alabama has to come to town. So how do you do it in another environment where you got to play on the road?
I wanted to go back to that, Bear. You make really good points about the first meeting. Again, 24-21, the final score. Bama beat Georgia. That was between the hedges. And like I mentioned, that was a game that we were at. Now, again, that was at the end of September. So these teams have changed a lot. I want to discuss that a bit. But again, you look back at that one, Bama had more first downs, 25-17. The big one, like you mentioned, they were 13 of 19 on third down in that game in Athens, which, and like you said, started, I think, 8 of 8. It was crazy. I remember being there in the stadium thinking, are they ever not going to get one? I mean, it was the best play calling from DeBoer, Grubb, all those guys, best execution. It came on third down, it seemed like, that entire game. They threw the football 39 times in that first matchup against Georgia. Ty Simpson was really good in that one. Georgia did have the rushing advantage, 227-117. But again, Bama had the passing advantage, 280-130. And Bama won the time of possession significantly, 35-36 to 24-24 for Georgia. So I say all that, Bear, and I turn it back to you, and I ask myself the question. Number one, how much have these teams changed since end of September? And number two, how much does that first matchup in Athens matter, if at all?
I think it has to matter because let's just go back to what we remember in both these games. And I go back to last season when Alabama took on Georgia. Georgia won the second half in both matchups. Alabama won the first. Georgia won the second. Georgia outgained Alabama by over 120 yards in both games. They outscored them in the second half. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, 7-0. Like, they won on both areas. Alabama was able to do just enough in the first half to guarantee that they put themselves in the second half with an advantage. And then in the other game, it was 27-11, and they needed that big Ryan Williams mass weapon of destruction to go off against, basically having Peter be called against them. So I think what's really changed these two teams is Gunnar Stockton's been playing at a much higher level. He's playing with confidence. Remember, that was his second SEC start. For Ty Simpson, that was his his second major road start. He had already gotten the yips out of the way when he had to go face off against Florida State and Doak Campbell. So a lot of things that we're looking at have been in favor of Georgia kind of turning the corner in different ways. I think that the play calling has been a lot better. I think that there's a better understanding of the offensive personnel. I would say that you look at Georgia's offensive line, it feels a lot more ceremoniously content. I feel like there's more cohesion. I feel like that everybody has gotten on the same page. You've been able to replace what you've lost with Kobe Young, with whether that be at tight end and Oscar Delp, or whether that be at Noah Thomas at wide receiver number 2, opposite of Zachariah Branch. I think with Alabama, you've seen some regression. you've seen some moments where the offense is kind of taking some steps back. The pass protection has died a little bit. The inability to run the football has been very evident at this point. It wasn't just a flash in the pan at the start of the year. You've seen wide receivers drop balls. Ryan Williams, I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he is just not want to be a part of the system, if he's not catching up with the playbook. I don't know if he is just the number 3 guy at this point. Because I'll tell you right now, it goes Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton. There's a lot of things that have changed in favor of Georgia in this game. Here's also what I know. You cannot convince me for 1 second that Alabama, who has been here before, been in this moment before, been doubted against Georgia. They've been the underdogs in every single matchup against Georgia in the Kalen DeBoer era. And they've handled business. They've been able to get the monkey on the back. So anybody who comes out with like this shenanigans, these comments saying, oh, well, what does Alabama got to worry about in this game? Could it be potentially a trap? Alabama's prepared for this. Like, this is the one game a year where you get to go ahead and strap on up and say, Bama's locked in, is Georgia. Because, again, no matter what you say about these two teams, dude, when they go on the field, one team you are guaranteed going to see the best version of them. That's Alabama.
I wanted to speak on, Bear, talking to some folks, some of our friends, our mutual friends down in Tuscaloosa, the Ryan Williams issue. I did get confirmation after the Iron Bowl. He had 0 targets in that football game. He has been dealing apparently with a hamstring injury, and that is something that they have done their best to kind of hide that and sort of use him as a decoy. But I think that is the reason you have not seen him nearly as involved as we would expect. What is his status in this game? I mean, I would fully expect him to play, but how close to 100%, if 100% is he? I think you make good points too. And what does it mean for the game? I mean, we'll lock in predictions here in a moment, but admittedly, since that late September game, I feel better about Georgia, and I'm kind of still where I was, if not even a little bit like more concerned with Bama, just because they cooled off so mightily in the month of November. And a lot of that, like you mentioned, not to oversimplify this game, because this is going to come down to trench warfare like we talked about last time. It's going to come down to that. I think there's a few keys in this game. Winning the battle in the trenches, third down defense, and turnovers. I mean, that's what these kind of games come down to, but also the play of these quarterbacks. And I think Gunnar Stockton's a completely different player than that first time we saw him against Alabama. He's a completely different guy. I still feel pretty much the same about Ty Simpson. Now, again, he sort of faded down the stretch. I didn't think he was great in the Iron Bowl, and let's give Auburn's defense credit. They've got a really good defense and a really good front seven, but he made some big throws and some clutch moments. Still feel confident in him that he will play well, but I think Gunnar Stockton, Bear, I think could be the biggest difference maker in this football game. Like, I think that's the thing we could see. What's the biggest difference between the first time they met and this meeting Saturday? It's Gunnar Stockton, because he's a completely different player than he was in late September.
I will go on the different side of the football. I think the biggest difference in this game is going to be, can Georgia not only find a way to stop the run game and make Ty Simpson have to throw it. I mean, he threw it 39 times in that first start, but you got to remind yourself of this. Can you get and close the door? Can you get to the quarterback? What has been the problem for Georgia all year? They get pressure. They're good against the run. They'll make their offense one-dimensional. They've struggled sacking the quarterback. The game last season was hard to stop a quarterback because of the mobility factor. And Ty Simpson's got some moves. I'm going to be the first to say that we all know you get him in space, he can run. But you got 0 sacks last game. Can you close the door? This is an Alabama offensive line that has allowed sacks consistently as of late. Remind yourself, 3 sacks in the Auburn game, 4 sacks in the Oklahoma game, 3 sacks in the South Carolina game, 4 sacks in the Missouri game. And you're Georgia. You're supposed to be the intimidating wall underneath Glenn Sherman and Kirby Smart. And it's supposed to be like a dictatorship of just pure insanity. Like the Industrial Revolution is supposed to be going on when you go into Athens, GA on the trenches. Like, that's what you're supposed to have. You don't have right now a guy like Jordan Davis. You don't have a guy like a Nolan Smith. You don't have a guy, even like I would say Damon Jones. You don't have guys like that anymore. You don't have a Will Anderson coming off of the edge. But you're still going to have to be able to get pressure on Ty Simpson, because when Ty Simpson's under duress, he'll throw into double coverage. He'll rush some plays. He'll throw it out of bounds. You get the ball back to Gunnar Stockton, it's going to be a night and day difference. I think on the other sideline of things, dude, you got to be able to trust Gunnar Stockton to win through the air. I think as much as you want to be that ground and pound attack, what Georgia's so accustomed to utilizing, knowing what you got in running backs, whether that be with Nate Frazier, or even getting the mobility of a Gunnar Stockton involved in these games, you got to be able to trust that he can throw the football. It is just a non-negotiable at that standpoint. I also wonder, are we going to see Chauncey Bowens playing this game? Are we going to see him being a factor? Because remember the first time that we saw Chauncey Bowens, 119 yards, 9.9 yards a play. Last time we saw him on the field, Texas game.
Yeah, that was his kind of breakout performance, if you recall, for Chauncey Bowens in that game against Alabama. Bear, we've hammered it down a lot. Third down defense, I think, is going to be massive in this one. You obviously cannot let Alabama, if you're Georgia, get off to a 8-for-8 start again and go 13-for-19 on third downs. I'm sure that's something Kirby and Glenn Schumann are just racking their brains over all week long, some different insults. And I agree with you. If you're Georgia, you will not win this game with 0 sacks. You got to get Ty Simpson on the ground, man. I mean, you have to. And like you said, Alabama's offensive line has shown they're susceptible. Everybody's been getting after them. If you're Georgia, you got to take advantage. Like you look back at the Texas game, what was one of the biggest reasons they beat Texas? They didn't sack him 5 or 6 times, but they hit him, they pressured him, they moved him, they made him uncomfortable, and they did get to him a few times. That was a big difference maker in that football game. Now, obviously, they wore down Texas in that game as well, but yeah, you're going to have to register, I think, at least 2 or 3 sacks on Ty Simpson. Some of those big momentum-swinging plays, difference-making plays. You can't have 0 sacks again and expect to win this football game. Again,
I'll tell you the other thing.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you the other thing you can't do. You can't have the minor mistakes, the small margins of error. Because think about this. Georgia had it won 3 times. They could have had it won. The first was on a pass right off the fingertips of Taylor. The second one, play design, 4th down, Cass Jones on the field. Cass Jones at the outside corner. He's in the end zone. Third one, the Ellis Robinson penalty. Ellis Robinson's grown up in front of our eyes. He's become a shutdown corner and one of the best, I think, in the SEC over the last month. You are going to be able to learn from your play design. So getting Cass Jones the ball, or knowing when to run into Chauncey Bowens, or knowing when to turn to Nate Frazier, or have a quarterback run where it is Gunnar Stockton. You got to be able to trust that your wide receivers are going to catch the ball. Those little details were as big as the play designs and the smartness of Ryan Grubb to run those 2 different plays with Josh Cuevas and then the one to the outside with Jam Miller. As smart as that play was, you also got to remind yourself, you were right there if you were Georgia. You cannot afford in this stage against this team have those little margins of errors be the major reasons why you don't end up winning.
Barry, let me ask you this again before we move into our predictions. Obviously, Bama historically has had the edge over Georgia, but I want to focus on the Kalen DeBoer era, obviously, as that most pertains to what we're going to see on Saturday. They've met twice since Kalen DeBoer has been there, and they've won both. But both times, Alabama, and both teams have had one. But what's been one of the big talking points? Kalen DeBoer off a bye week. There's no bye week here. Does that make you feel – does that matter to you in this? I think it's interesting. I do think it's an interesting kind of side note here. Hey, you don't have an extra week to get ready like you had those first 2 matchups. We'll see if it matters, but that for me was one of those things in the first matchup that gave me such confidence. Kalen DeBoer off a bye week, it's not a factor in this one. I just think that's interesting. It's an interesting thing to keep in the back of your mind.
I'm looking at it, but I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of Kirby, if not now, when? Because if I think for some point we are all saying, hey, listen, it's Kalen DeBoer, it's Alabama, great coach. This is not a guy that loses to people like Kirby Smart. He's 7-0 against some of the biggest names in the industry. Brian Kelly, Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart. He beats them all. He's able to handle business against every single one of them. The question comes to at this point, it's a Kirby thing. Because we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But now we're going to be looking at 1-8. Oh, well, it's Alabama and it's Nick Saban. It's Alabama and it's Nick Saban. We can use that. You go 3-0 against Kirby Smart. Number one, there is no more argument that you are one of the top 5 coaches in college football. I'm sorry. There's just none, in my opinion. You can say whatever you want about him losing to Clark Lee or to Brent Venables, and I'll listen to it. But the man has beaten the tyrants of the industry and he's handled business in every single step. But the other thing is, it shows you that this is truly an Alabama problem for Kirby. And that if not now, probably never. You're going to finish, in my opinion, because of the new era of college football that we know, you're probably going to finish with a losing record against Bama. You would have to stay at Georgia for the next, I would say, 10, 15 years and guarantee that you guys meet up somewhere in the playoffs or meet up somewhere in the SEC championship just to get to 500. You got to change the narrative, because right now the narrative is very loud and clear. Kalen DeBoer will lose to an underwhelming coach. Kirby Smart will just lose to Alabama. Doesn't matter who's at the helm, because it was never a Nick Saban problem. It was the Crimson Tide problem.
Yeah, certainly, Kirby Smart is taking this one. It wouldn't matter who the opponent was. This game means a lot to him, but he's taking this one very, very personally. You could hear the frustration after the game late September when asked about, losing to Alabama again. He doesn't want to have to answer those questions again. And, of course, on the flip side, Bama just wants to keep playing the role of the boogeyman. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Going to be a really, really fun one. Georgia and Alabama in the SEC title. I had a thought on the top of my head, and for some reason I just cannot forget it. Or I can't remember it, I should say. I am forgetting it. Either way, whatever. All right, Bear, let's lock in some picks. Oh, I was going to say this. Kirby Smart, tough coach to beat twice in a season. That's all I was going to say. Tough coach to beat twice. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but tough coach to beat twice. All right. That being said, Bear, on that note, let's lock in some picks. Let's lock in some predictions. It's Georgia. It's Alabama. It's the SEC title. Would you like the honors, or you want me to start first?
Yeah, I'll go first. This really is going to be a game, I think, to remember. I think for starters, Alabama, win or lose, will go to the college football playoff. So if that's what people are wondering about in this moment, I think Alabama is either going to keep it close enough, or the college football playoff committee is not going to penalize them. They will be in the playoff regardless.
Humor me. They lose by 3 touchdowns, are they in?
I still think they're in. Because if I just don't see a scenario where Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti do not go ahead after this season, knowing that Texas is out, knowing that Vanderbilt's out, knowing that teams like Michigan are out, all did their job, and then, because we have to have 2 G5 teams in, we're going to have to make this work. Like it just will not happen. So I think Alabama's in it regardless. This is going to be a game that we will remember, because every single time Alabama and Georgia meet up, it's a game to remember. That's what happens when you talk about legends of college football. They deliver on every spectrum. Alabama and Georgia are legends of the game. This is going to come down to 3 main elements for me. Number 1, margin of error. And that can come on any way. Ty Simpson overshooting a wide open Ryan Williams. That could come on a Taylor Taylor dropping a football on 3rd down in the red zone. That could come on going forward on 4th and coming up short in your own territory. The margin of details in the small game will carry such a big stick in this matchup. The second thing, which quarterback is more efficient from the get-go? I understand that we could talk about what we've seen in the past from Carson Beck, from Gunnar Stockton, being able to deliver in the second half of games. This is not one of those games where you just want to bank on your laurels of second half adjustments. We know that Kirby Smart is the king of winning at halftime. We also know that a team like Alabama, if they're able to build enough of a lead, they have that cushion. They're not going to let it on up. The third thing and the most important thing, who is going to deliver that first punch, that wow moment, that holy crap, they went for it. Kirby Smart is not afraid to swing the hammer. Kalen DeBoer last week, 4th down inside the red zone against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, showed you, I will have my drop you nuts moment, and I'm okay with it. Isaiah Horton back in the end zone. This is a game that needs no introduction, because we know what it's about. And at the end of the day, so far, I have called this game right every single time. So what I say usually goes. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to see him do it. I have to watch him find a way to get it done. Kirby Smart has never won against Alabama outside of a national championship. He doesn't do it. Prove me wrong, Kirby. Prove to me that this time it's different. Because Alabama's good enough. Kalen DeBoer is good enough. Ty Simpson is good enough. The Crimson Tide are passionate enough. And they want to leave no shred of doubt. That team that you saw in Doak Campbell Stadium was extinct before it got back on the plane. You want to know how you show that? Death taxes beating Georgia. Death taxes beating Georgia. 28-24 final score. Ty Simpson, 4 touchdowns on the day. One-sided offense, one-sided result, one common denominator. Kirby Smart. You can't beat Alabama. Roll Tide wins the SEC.
This has become one of my favorite games, as I mentioned earlier, Bear, to go and to watch. Just elite football, the passion, the energy, two proud fan bases, and two fan bases that, while they don't like each other, respect the heck out of each other, because these are the two that swing the biggest sticks and have deserved to do so. They've earned it, right? Both have done so on the field. So can't wait to get to Atlanta. Can't wait to get Mercedes-Benz. It's going to be, in a world in which people question how much do conference title games mean, for 3.5 or 4 hours on Saturday afternoon in Atlanta, that stuff will take a back seat. The college football playoff, this is about pride. This is about Georgia and Bama just not liking each other, and the winner being able to say, hey, we added another one to our trophy case and we got to beat you to do it. So that's going to make for a lot of fun, I think, on Saturday in this game. The mental advantage in this one is significant. It is, because I go back to the game end of September, and I think you and I remember us having this conversation. I remember our picks. You went Alabama, and I went Georgia. And sure enough, at the end of the day, the boogeyman's still the boogeyman till you kill the boogeyman. Like that just, no matter the coach, no matter who's playing, it is what it is. And Alabama has been Georgia's boogeyman. They have. Historically, look at the records, look at the numbers. Kirby Smart 1-7 against Bama. Georgia, like you said, never beat Bama outside of a national title, certainly not an SEC title. It's just the thing they can't get over, the hump, for whatever reason, they can't get over. But streaks are made to be broken, Mayor. And Kirby Smart is a hell of a coach to have to beat twice. And Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, you don't have a bye week this go around. You got 7 days to get your football team ready. And as good a coach as Kalen DeBoer is coming off the bye week, I like Georgia to find a way. Streaks are made to be broken. This, to me, feels like the moment. Kirby Smart, one of the best coaches in college football. Kalen DeBoer, right there with him. And if Kalen DeBoer wins it again, we're going to have a hard time not justifying that these guys are at least neck and neck, because, hey, you'll be 3-0, and there'll be no denying it. 3-0. He's got your number. I think Georgia finds a way. And I think it's because, as much as the mental edge stuff matters, as much as history matters, I think Georgia's a better football team than Alabama right now. Georgia, to me, has grown so much as a football team, especially at the quarterback position from late September to now. They've grown defensively, in my opinion. I think they're significantly better than they were defensively late September. Alabama's still a really, really good football team. But to me, they kind of faded down the stretch a little bit. They're winning. They're winning games. But there's some leaks in the ship right now. There's a couple loose ends with Alabama that concern me. With the way Ty Simpson's been playing, he made some big throws in an Iron Bowl. I was there firsthand to witness it. I think Kirby and company, they're going to be able to do some things defensively. I do think they'll register 2 or 3 sacks in this game. That'll be one of the big things they couldn't do in the first matchup. They'll do in this one. I think they'll be much better on third down. It's Georgia, Alabama. It's going to be close. It's going to come down to the wire. It's going to come down to 4 or 5 big plays. Who's going to make the winning plays in the key moments? I think Georgia's going to make those winning plays. This one's personal for Kirby Smart. I think you see this Georgia team take it personally. Streaks are made to be broken. The boogeyman is the boogeyman till you kill the boogeyman. I don't know if he's going to be totally dead after Saturday, but the boogeyman's going to take a major hit, and Kirby Smart is finally going to get his in this game against Alabama. Give me Georgia 27, Alabama 20, as we sit and await the fate of the Crimson Tide when it comes to the college football playoff, and Georgia finds themselves yet again for a second straight year getting that bye. Give me Dogs 27-20, and I can't wait to witness it firsthand. It's going to be an electric game.
You know what's very funny about this? You not only took the Dogs and the points, you also took the under. I took Alabama and the over. So a lot of things going big in this game, completely different. Bottom line, before we get on out of here, Alabama, I have them winning. You have them losing. Alabama still in the college football playoff?
I think so, especially losing by 7. There's just no way. I agree with you. You're sitting at number 1 in the SEC. It would be just a travesty to allow the SEC championship. And I was on this same thing last year. You shouldn't get punished for making your conference title game and going to play it, win or lose or what have you, especially when it's the SEC title. Like you said, we start leaving teams out because they lose this game. Yeah, Greg Sankey and Tony Batiti?
Tony Batiti.
They're going to pick up their ball and go elsewhere. So play those games and find out what happens.
You're definitely not going to get that same feeling when last season we let the ACC runner-up in the college football playoff.
Yeah, very different dynamic. Guys, that being said, I'm going Dogs. Bears going Crimson Tide. Just like earlier in the season, we are split on this matchup, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Who you picking in the SEC championship, Georgia or Alabama? Guys, it's going to do all for us. We appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Before we get out of here, do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, because as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Guys, it's NBA tip-off week, and FanDuel's your home for live betting. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel's got live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join, because FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU. And really quickly, we know our friend Bear loves the folks in the state of Missouri. FanDuel is now legal in Missouri. So for all of our MIZ folks, or if there's any Dogs or Crimson Tide fans that for whatever reason live in the show me state, you can now play along with our friends at FanDuel as well. Just wanted to throw that out there. Again, play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA, college football, college basketball, everything under the sun that we discuss. And again, we appreciate our friends at FanDuel for their love and support. That being said, we're going to get out of here, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. As always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Check us out where you get your podcast all across your favorite social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Cole the Bear Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. We're signing off. Have a great rest of your day. Appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll see you this weekend in Atlanta.